For 3 years, I was depressed. All I wanted to do was go back to that beautiful, glorious light. I just did not want to stay. So I began to try to find ways to take my life. Just as I'm about to take the pills, my son comes running into the bathroom. And he opens up his hand, and in his hand, there is a half of a butterfly emerging out of a worm. And he opens his hand and he says, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, look what I have found." I was something about that moment that I turned my hands over and dropped the pills, drank the water, picked my son up and took him out to the playground. And the journey began. Hello, my name is Norma. Officially, people tend to add everything else to that name. So I'll give that to I'm Reverend Dr. Norma Edwards. I was born in Guyana, South America. But when I had the near-death experience, my husband and I had immigrated to London for educational purposes. And while we were there, I was 26 years of age. I was at work. I wasn't feeling very well for a couple of days, but I was not aware that I was carrying a baby. I just didn't know that. And in the middle of a work day, I worked at the British Railways Board at that time in London, England. In the middle of the day, I began to experience discomfort and pain. So I asked to be released from work and stepped into the elevator. I was in critical pain. And there was a young lady, it was very important. There was one other person in the elevator. And she was Hindu. She was Hindu because she was wearing the attire and the dot on the head. And we were the only two in the elevator. And in those days, when an elevator stopped, it stopped with a jerk. And when that elevator stopped with a jerk, all hell broke loose. I collapsed and she went into action. We were not very far from St. Bartholomew's Hospital. And instead of calling an ambulance, she got help from people, and they got me in a cab and got me to the hospital. Got to the hospital, and the cab driver, in all of the confusion, he left with my handbag in his car. Now, I'm unconscious, and the only thing she knows, I barely whispered my name is Norma. That's all she knows about me. And I completely pass out, and here she is now. She can't tell my last name. She doesn't know anything about me. So she stayed. And they called the police, who began the search because, I collapsed in the building where I worked. So they had to get very busy to find out who I am. I got to the hospital. I was in semi-conscious, in a lot of pain. And all of a sudden, I blacked out. I lost consciousness. But I kind of opened my eyes to understand that I was on the ceiling, looking down at this operating room where they had taken me, you see. Because what they had discovered is that I was carrying a 4-month baby who died inside of me. And I wasn't aware of it, you see. So that began to poison my body. It caused this emergency. So I'm on the ceiling and I'm looking down at doctors and nurses running backward and forward, to kind of like whenever there's emergency. And the next thing you know, I flatlined. And I'm on the ceiling looking down like, how could I flatline? I could see the equipment show that I flatlined, you see. But I'm no longer in pain. The pain is gone. I feel perfectly normal. And the only thing I want to do is communicate to the team that I am all right. But I'm on a ceiling and they're standing in an operating room. So I begin to, how do I get off the ceiling and down to the floor? And as soon as I did, I'm on the floor and I'm running from doctors to nursing going, hello, here I am. I'm okay. You don't have to do whatever it is that you're planning to do. And then it dawned on me, nobody can see me. Nobody can hear me. And I'm watching, them moving back and forth with the equipment, etc., etc. And when they picked up the instrument, I guess that was seen to be able to try to shock me back from the position above, I could see the radiation and the electricity on that piece of equipment. And the thought in my head is, if that apply that to my body, I would surely die, because you see, you couldn't tell me that I had died. I was not in pain anymore. And when they raised the equipment, I thought, I'm getting out of here. And with that, I went straight through the ceiling and into a very, very dark tunnel. And I'm traveling in this tunnel very, 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 very swiftly. And it takes me to a place which is, as I approach this place, I mean, the light, brilliant, brilliant, beautiful light, colors that I had never seen before in my life. And they all radiated very beautifully. And then I kind of entered. And once I entered, there was this amazing feeling of love unspeakable and full of glory. I have merged with this light that I was approaching, and now I just feel bliss. I'm absolutely in bliss, and I've merged with the light, and I'm wondering, well, what is there to see here next? It seems to me, I know I'm traveling, and I stop at what I've come to know now as the Akashic record. The record where everything is recorded. And I entered. And when I enter, the first thing I see is a group of people. I would say about 100 or so of them. And they're waving to me. They're welcoming me. And it's strangely enough, I can recognize each and every one of them. They are from different past lives, souls that I've interacted with whom I have connection. And they're like on the other side of a river. And they are welcoming me, and they're happy to see me. And among them at the time was my grandparents, who had already deceased. There were a couple of other people, like my aunt, etc., who I could recognize as souls that I had walked with in this lifetime. But they were souls that I had walked with, it seemed, in other lifetimes. And they were just on the other side of this river to let me know that they were welcoming me and everything was fine. Now, my feelings, I am in like total bliss. Then I am moved to the record. And actually, I'm sitting now to review the life that I have just left. Some of the places where I would be able to see why it is I was drawn into that particular experience. Because, for example, one of the first images I saw, it's like it was a time when there was no electricity on Earth. So people walked around with these, lights, and we're in a tunnel, and it's a bunch of women. There were women. The men were carrying the lighted, looks like lanterns, but we were all women, and we were in this. I guess it's a cave, and the cave was kind of like dark, so they were carrying light. And when we exited out of the cave, it was dark on the outside, but we were at a river. And there were a number of us women, and they put us into boats. And I realized that the tribe that I belonged to was at war, and they were losing the war. And so they gathered all of us women, got us through this cave to the opening up of the shore, and we were on the shorelines, and there were boats there, and they were putting us in these boats because they knew they were losing the battle, and they wanted us women to stay alive because we would be the ones who would be able to bring forth children to repopulate. And they put us in the boats, and they pushed us out to sea. And there we were crying, etc., etc. Some of us had children with us, and others did not. And the hope was that many of us would survive. And that was the very first image, and I was one of those survivors. And then it took me to the record now so I can see what happened after being put out, in the ocean and surviving. And one of the very first images that I kind of looked at was myself as a child. Christ was being crucified, and I was on a horse. But the point seemed to be I was there to make sure that he died on the cross before they took him off. So in other words, I was not the kind of person who was crying because they were crucifying him. And quite frankly, later on in the review, I discovered that I was Paul. And my job there was to ensure that he died on the cross. And then the scene moved to I'm a child, and I went with my mother in the cotton fields, and we're picking cotton, and I'm black. And I could hear, I'm a child, I would say about 12 or 13, and I could hear the crack of the master man's whip on the backs of those who are not working as swiftly as they could. They're not producing as swiftly as they could. And I know that when he comes around the corner, I'm a child. I can't pick cotton as fast as the women, And I know that I will feel that whip on my back. And the fear of when he comes around the corner, because he's on a horse, when he comes around the corner, I'm expecting to feel the whip on my back because my amount that I have picked is not enough. But when he came around the corner, I just kind of changed who I was. Was no longer a child. And I was no longer black. For a moment there, it's like showed me who he was the white man on the horse with the whip that I was afraid of. But now I was the one person. I was the white person who was. It sounds confusing, but you talk about confused. I was very, very much confused. And so what it did for me in this lifetime coming to the United States of America is begin to understand it's not a black-white thing as we think. In one generation, we're black. In another generation, we're white. In another generation, we're mixed. And we have to live. What it taught me was we have to live every single possible experience before we can exist and move our identity off of planet Earth. Planet Earth is a school. And every soul must come to this school, you see. And when you come to the school, your experiences are in different bodies, different colors, different standards of education. At one point in time, you're probably someone who's never been educated. And then in another lifetime, you're very well educated and you're asked to do something with it. So I'm looking at this record, but from the perspective of who I am in different experiences, if you see what I mean. And then I come out from that and I go back to the river where all these souls are waiting there to welcome me and to show me around and so on and so forth. And my aunt, who was the most recent person who had gone to the other side, she stepped forward and she said to me, "I'm sorry, you can't stay. They're sending you back." And I was like, why? Because the light on the other side is beautiful. It's glorious. It warms your heart. It's hard to put into words. it really takes you into a kind of transcendent state. Everything around you is light, pure light, and you're feeling this energy of love. So the last thing I wanted to do was to return. And I said, well, then why do I have to go back? And she said, we want you to take a message back. We want you to take the message. Life is eternal. There is no death. There is transition from one level of life to another. And I was not a happy camper. I was not a happy camper. And once she said that, it's like the group waved to me and helped me to understand that when I come back, I would still have the opportunity to be in touch with those on the other side who would help me and guide me to manifest and fulfill my purpose. And the next thing I know is I'm moving now from beautiful, phenomenal light and love and glory. And I find myself dropped back into my physical body. It was horrible. The energy field felt very negative. All that beautiful, radiant light and love. You know, we tend to think that love is whatever. Love is blue. It's beautiful energy of blue light. And once I was forced back into the body, I immediately began to experience pain as we would experience it here on this side of the realm. So I come back, they force me into the body. Now I'm in the hospital, and I'm on a hospital bed, and I'm in excruciating pain. I am not a happy camper. And I realize that I am in a bed, and they have me under observation. And there are two nurses, female nurses, sitting at a table who are observing me, you see. And they have a little radio playing softly, and it's playing classical music. And I'm in this excruciating pain. But all of a sudden I realize that I can see the colors and the patterns of the rhythm. And they're sitting there, and apparently both of them, they're nurses, but they attended the same church. And this was a Monday. And on the Sunday, one of them went to church and the other one had to work, you see. So they're sitting there now, and the one is explaining to the other what the pastor's sermon was. And the pastor's sermon was about hell and damnation. And I'm lying in this bed with all these tubes inside of me, and I want to scream at them. There's no such thing as hell. Because I came back with that understanding. But of course, they can't hear me. I've got tubes inside of me. But the other thing that I noticed was that I was not only hearing the music, I was seeing the fact that every note carries a color. And I could see and observe the interaction of blue with green and yellow, and recognize that those were in the physical body, we hear notes, but when we are in the spiritual body as well, we can see the colors, because every note has a color. And I'm observing this, and I'm like, what in the world happened to me, see? Well, while I'm thinking about that, two male, I guess they work in the building, two male came along, and they stopped, and as they stopped, I could see the difference between the colors in their energy field and the colors in the energy field of the females. And so at this point now I'm thinking, something happened to me that has dramatically changed how I see the world. And my journey back to Earth began. They kept me under observation. I was very careful not to say what I was seeing. As a matter of fact, one of the female nurses, I could see that she had cancer, but she didn't know it. And I'm thinking, but wait a minute, she's a nurse. How come she can't? Because I could see inside of the body, you see. I mean, how come she doesn't know that she has something that the medical profession has got to kind of look into and care for. And I'm too scared to talk about it, if you see what I'm saying, because I'm confused. How do I know? How I come to know all this, sense this, feel it, experience it, you see? And then I think they had me in there for observation for about 2 days, and then they took me into the ward. You know, in those days they have these wards with all these beds. And when I got there, I really, really, really needed sleep. And there was a woman there who was crying out. She was in so much pain. And I wanted to try and get some sleep. So I kind of pushed myself up and I said, ma'am, I can't tell you where this came from. I said, no, stop crying out. You are not going to die. You're not going to leave the planet. It's not your time. And then it occurred to me, what am I saying? Where did I get that information? And the journey began with all of my senses turned on. And believe me, that's not an easy way to live. The day I was leaving the hospital, my husband came to pick me up, and we were leaving the hospital. And you know how you walk? You walk out of a building, and you walk halfway to the crossing, and you wait for the cars, etc., to pass, and then you can cross over. And there was this woman in front of me, you see, standing in front of me. And to this day, I will never know whether she deliberately tried to walk into the traffic to take her life, or it was an accident. But the next thing I know, she stepped into the traffic and she got hit. When she got hit by the car, as soon as she dropped to the ground, I watched her body, her spirit come out of her body. And I found myself talking to her. I mean, people around thought I was mad. I said, no, don't be afraid. When you get there, you will get into the light and you'll be welcomed, etc., etc. And I literally talked her into going right into the light. And then when I stopped, I'm looking at people looking at me, and some of them are backing away, you see. It's like, who is this person? But that was the indication to me that my spiritual sight had been turned on. For 3 years, I was depressed. All I wanted to do was go back to that beautiful, glorious light and the comfort of love and light. And I just did not want to stay. So I began to try to find ways to take my life. But I think, when I think about it now, I have to laugh, because there are lots of places in my life today where I could see that I came out successful, but I was really, really terrible at trying to get to the other side. I tried it 3 times, and each time I failed. The last time I tried it, my son was 5 years old. And the first time I tried to take my life, I took some pills and it didn't work. So they rushed me to the hospital, etc., etc. So I made friends with a nurse, and she worked in the where people come in, emergency room. And she started telling me stories about these people who come into the emergency room and they took pills and thinking they would die, but they never stopped to really do proper research to know how many they need to take. And oh my God, that woke me up. So I kind of like worked around her and I got the exact amount, and of course, what that meant is you had to go to the doctor and say you can't sleep. And at that time, they'd give you like 3 or 4 sleeping pills. And then you go back until you get the right amount. And I did it, got it all together, see? And when I had the right amount, I'm standing in the bathroom, glass in one hand with water. The other hand, I have the pills, you see. And this time around, I know I got the right amount. And just as I'm about to take the pills, my son comes running into the bathroom. And he opens up his hand, and in his hand, there is a half of a butterfly emerging out of a worm in his hand. And he opens his hand and he says, Mommy, 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 look what I have found. And there was something about that moment that I turned my hands over and dropped the pills into the toilet bowl, drank the water, picked my son up, and took him out to the playground. And the journey began, living with heightened spiritual senses. Like, for example, I'm on the bus one day, and this young woman is sitting across from me, and I could see that she's very sad. When the person who's sitting next to her gets up, I sit next to her, and I say, "What's wrong? You're so sad." And she explains to me that she's married and her husband wants a baby, but she don't seem to be able to carry them. By the time she gets to 3 months, they fall away, and she's very upset about that, and she's worried that her husband would leave her. And I looked at her and I said, "Don't worry about it. I'll help you." And we became friends. I remember when she called me, she said, "I'm pregnant." She said, "But they never last more than 3 months." And I said, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to help you." So we got to the 3 month period, and we got over that, and we celebrated that, she and I and her husband. And I said, "Don't worry about it. I'll help you." Well, she carried our baby to 9 months. And I woke up one Sunday morning and I'm in the bathroom and I've got labor pains. I'm not pregnant, but I've got labor pains. And I'm in the bathroom and I'm holding my stomach, and our husband calls. And my husband answers the phone and he says, we're on our way to the labor room. Because I had promised her I would be there with her. Well, I couldn't get up off the floor because I was carrying all the labor pains. By the time I got to the hospital, she looked at me and she says, "I don't know why women complain. It wasn't that bad at all. I didn't have pain. I had pressure." And I said, "That's because I had the pain and you had the pressure." So began a life of what is a little bit different from what we think life is. Healing came on. And those days I was not willing to tell people that I could heal them. So I would do it quietly and shut my mouth. Now, it took to live with these heightened senses and etc. was not easy. Particularly the fact that my husband at the time, he was studying engineering. So that's where his head was, you see. So the process was very difficult because I had nobody to speak to about it. And I had this fear that if I did, they'd put me in a mental institution. So for years and years and years, I never spoke about it. But the universe was good enough to have sent me individually, one at a time, spiritual teachers who helped me to understand that I do not need to walk in fear because of what I could see and what I could do. And so it has been 8 spiritual teachers, and they've covered three different countries. And that eventually got me to my purpose. Every single soul has come to earth with a purpose. It's been an interesting life. I finally found my life's purpose. And my life's purpose was to go into prisons and help people to heal. I've been asking for my purpose, and then they showed me my purpose, and I said, "I can't do that. I'm afraid of guns. I can't. I can't see." Because when you come back from a near-death experience, your emotional system is heightened, and it's hard for you to be around, let's say, prisoners who have no privilege to do what they want. And so I'm talking to God about this. I've been asking for my purpose, but now that it's been shown to me, I don't think I can engage it. And I'm driving along one day in a highway here in the United States of America, come to the red light. And the lane next to me is a driver, and it's a car with the top down. And there is this amazing piece of music that is coming out of this car. You see what I'm saying? He's playing a piece of music, and the piece of music was Bob Marley, and Bob was speaking about the fact that music is the key to unlocking the doors that keep us imprisoned. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this, and then the lights change, the person pulls off, but he doesn't realize that he's left me with the answer that I have been looking for. Music is the key. And of course, I was always very interested in serious classical music. And the opportunity came for me to first go volunteer in prisons. And I took music in there. And then I became the first contractor who took spiritual concepts and wove it into musical patterns that helped prisoners to regain their lives. 20 years. So for me, I had a near-death experience. It was difficult to adjust to normal living. But once I learned how to do that, then I was led to my purpose. And for me, the most powerful thing about that whole near-death experience and the transformation had more to do with the number of lives that got helped and got transformed over many, many years. 20 years being in prisons, working with women as well as men, and watched many, many, many lives transformed.